Through the years, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to be able to sit in the offices of some pretty successful CEOs around the United States. And I always want to pick their brains and find out what is their secret to success, or what do they say is critical and needed for success. And 201, every single time, the topic of culture always comes up. They always want to talk about the power of their culture and the things that they did to change the culture, initiate the culture, make the culture what it is. And then they'll often refer to the fact that as they grow, that's their biggest fear, is that losing that culture becoming diluted, not being the same thing. We struggle with that same thing here at the Rescue. Is we had a very tight, strong program that my wife implemented here that was very different than the way a lot of trainers operate and work, but it takes a lot of extra time. And so there's a lot of pressure and tension to say, hey, we need to build capacity up and go much larger and do a lot bigger. And it's okay, but as you get larger, and we added more ambassadors, what we call volunteers, and you add more people into the process, everybody following her structure, her process becomes much more difficult, and that culture starts to water down. And that's what these CEOs were talking about, is each employee I hire, whether it's at frontline or it's at executive level or mid-level, it doesn't matter. They all bring something in, and they take their DNA and pour it into the DNA of your culture, and it can dilute it down if the value systems are wrong or things are off. Well, the big thing that we talk about is change in culture. And I find this to be the most frustrating things with CEOs, because those are the successful ones. So when you go sit with the other CEOs who are saying, hey, we got all these problems, we got issues. Okay, great. We've identified we need to change the culture in order to be successful, or we're going to die. We have to adapt, or we're not going to be here, right? And they're talking about the struggles of changing culture and how frustrated they are changing culture. And I'll listen to their frustrations, and I'll listen to things. And what I'll find out is that usually there's a disconnect, a huge disconnect. And that disconnect is they're business people. We're all business people, right? So what we're used to as business people is that if we want to change a policy or implement a new process within our business, we can do that fairly quickly, right? We can do that. We could say, hey, from starting on the first of the month, all of your expense reports are due by the 15th instead of by the 30th. We'll probably struggle that in the first 30 days, and then the next 60 days probably get 90% compliance. And by the 90th day, everybody's on board and are getting it, especially when they don't get reimbursed for their expense reports, right? And so we're used to making those types of changes in business, and that time frame, that 30, that 60, that 90-day time frame, and things to change. So when we want to implement culture change, in our mind, we're kind of thinking that's how it works. So we hold the big rallies, the strategy offsites, we print up t-shirts, we print up posters, we do all this kind of stuff in order to move the culture in a new direction. And we get to that 90-day mark, and we're like, nothing feels any different here. I'm still struggling, I'm still challenging, I'm still doing it. Yes, that's exactly what happens. The best analogy that I could give you if you're wanting to change the culture and shift your culture, the best analogy I could give you is think of your company as an aircraft carrier, right? So you're an aircraft carrier. You're the Gerald R. Ford, right? The largest aircraft carrier in the world. And you know you're headed in the wrong direction, and you need to turn around and go the other way, right? You're headed in this direction, you know it's problematic, and you've got to turn that aircraft carrier around and go the other way. Well, here's the problem. Your aircraft carrier is sitting in the middle of the Mississippi River. Now, it'd be one thing to take that aircraft carrier and turn it around in the ocean, right? But there's 100,000 tons of displacement on an aircraft, on the Gerald R. Ford. So in the Mississippi River, that means that I could go, they're barely going to change. And as I'm trying to turn it, I'm going to run into the bank on this side, I'm going to run on the bank to this side, I'm going to run on the bank to this side, right? And that's what's going to happen. And as I hit that bank, some people are going to fall off. There's going to be some disruption. There's going to be people going, man, maybe we shouldn't be turning around. It's too dangerous to try to turn around. Let's go back to the way it was. Let's push that thing back to the way it was. That's what's going to happen inside that aircraft carrier as you're trying to turn it around. No different than culture change. I have not worked with any company where we've done a complete, whether it's a quality initiative, something like a Six Sigma type of thing, or whether it's a culture change initiative. I have not worked with anybody where we didn't have to replace some people in the process. There was always that point where we got to say, hey, this person is not right person, right seat with this culture, right? They're stuck over here. They're not going to make the journey. They're not going to make the change. You have to do that. So when it hits the sides and people fall off, that's okay, right? In fact, sometimes we have to do that and make that happen. But if you're going to initiate culture change, which you have to, all right, You have to prepare yourself, and you have to prepare your leadership team and your entire company for the journey that they're about to go on, right? And you have to prepare them. If that analogy, I think, works really well, because it tells them that, hey, we're going to change this culture, and it's not going to change overnight. And I know it's not going to change overnight. I know it's going to take some time. I know it's going to be rough, because if I take an aircraft carrier sitting in the Mississippi River and I try to turn it around, we can see that I have very little room to get that thing turned around, head in the right direction, but eventually I can do it. And you can as well when it comes to changing your culture. So that's what I wanted to leave you with today, is think about this. If you're trying to initiate culture change with the organization, I applaud you. I think it's exciting, and I am rooting for you. But make sure you prepare yourself mentally and all of your team mentally, as well as your company mentally, for the time it takes to change culture. It doesn't happen in that 30, 60, 90-day window that your policy changes and your business changes happen. It takes a lot longer, but once you get there, it's worth it.